All
So
right.
the only thing that,
Great
so
work, Charlie.
the only thing that varied then, I says, is I think our total submitted number was slightly different.
I think 1402 is the all-time amount right now in the Corral database and the test database, which is it ended in July 2020. So that is my current count from our actual report that we built a few months ago. So.
All right. I'm guessing everybody is back with us. We're going to dig in and we're going to do a few things. We're going to take a look, kind of get another repetition at making a pretty simple chart graph. Then we're going to take a look back into some of the work that we have already done and bring those along with a few improvements. And again, our goal is to work further towards polishing, but also getting repetition, also getting to see, hey, I selected a data source, I was in design, and then I went in and I made sure my description was helpful to anybody viewing the report, made sure my title was helpful for people to know what they're looking for in the report. So we'll take a look about a few of those things. We will most likely get into management, report management, again, in our after the next break. But let's get started. So I will share my screen. And let's take this ADU idea and let's take this idea into a chart really quick. I will ask someone to after I do this for a little while, I'll switch it over and we'll ask somebody to go through this with us all together. We can build it out. All right, so I'm going to go back to reports and just get used to where I am. I'm not sure what changes I had in there, but I don't need them anymore. So from our reports tab, I'm going to click the add a report plus button. I could have done that from where I was as well. Thinking about it, I'm going to select, so we're just going to recreate what we just did. So grab the same data source, building permits. We're going to recreate this in a chart format. So in my mind, I am thinking an X and a Y axis, and I'm thinking a column graph. So I have my data source. I don't need anything else to join here. I'm going to go to design. I'm going to give this a title of ADU summary. I'm going to do a bad example of adding information that you don't need into your title. I'm going to say chart on here. That is a bad example, but I'm just doing it since we already have an ADU summary that we just created. And let me add my initials in here. So I'm going to move down to the report part and I'm going to click charts. I did that pretty quickly, but again, I'm adding the report part. I want it to be a chart. Let's give this a title. And I think our title on the last one is ADU. What do we have here? ADU building permits. I wish I had a longer description to add in here. Let me just copy some text and throw it in, or I guess this is a acceptable description. So adding some text in there to help our users know what they're looking at exactly. If you've put any assumptions in, if you've added any filters that narrow down the time or the type or anything, it's good to include that in your description. Speaking of best practice, so people know your built-in assumptions so they can very, very quickly understand what they're looking at.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, that's going to be important, especially when you have 8 to 10 people or more creating reports in the same system. And you might have people come and go, and then later you'd be looking at a report and say, what is this? I don't understand this, why did they make this report? So having that kind of self-documentation of each thing that you've created in there and your idea for the report in that description will definitely help anyone coming along later understand what the purpose was when you created it and if it's still relevant or whatever. So that's good just to document what you're thinking with each report.
Absolutely. Okay, so in our x-axis, we want time. We again want these laid out so that we can narrow these down by time. And in our y-axis, so I'm going to grab created date for our x-axis. I'm going to use our plus symbols. Moment. And scroll down, find created date. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to try to do just each time I touch one of these pieces, I'm going to try to go a little more in depth and just get it polished from the beginning. Okay, field alias, created date. We're grouping by year. You know what? Why not? We just want year chunks, so I'm not going to change this to month. I'm just going to group this by year. That sounds great. And then I'm going to come over and we're going to grab our job ID. So great time to use our filtering or our search to get job ID. It comes in, it's decided this is a sum. Nope, we just want a count of this. We want a distinct count of the job ID so we know how many jobs we have. And count of ADU jobs or count of ADU building permits. So I'm changing the label so it can be something that is easier to read, easier to understand. Changing the format. All right, so those are some field properties. I want to change the report type I'm looking at. So this initially shows up as a line. And you know what? I'm going to go over to the right. I'm going to click on report part properties. And here under general information, we have line. I'm going to go ahead and go down to the next column. And as you hover over each one of these, you can see what this will end up looking like. So if you're curious at what possibilities are there, just hover over them for a moment and you'll get to see that. So I'm going to select column. We can see a number of other options for my Y labels. So if I have a longer, my X labels, if I have a longer date, like we had the other day with month, and then the full year, 4-digit year, I might want to angle these. So down here at the bottom, these went from being horizontal to now they're diagonal. It give me a little more space. Great. You see this hover labels box is checked. So each time I hover over something, it's giving me the value. I can click on.
I'll jump in here real quick. Sorry, I just want to say this while I'm seeing it. So as you guys are building these things, also be looking at the data as you're going and keep validating that against that part of your brain that says, does this data look right or does this look wrong? And obviously Chris is talking about the layout stuff right now, but obviously if you're looking at this at an ADU report, you would look at those numbers and you're like, okay, well, obviously those are not correct. That's because Chris didn't add the filter. But looking at those numbers and validating those, whether or not they make sense in your brain, is what's going to tell you whether or not you're on the right track or you need to add something. So right now we can see how high those numbers are, tells us we obviously need to add a filter in. Chris is, moving on to other things right now, so we don't need to add that right now, but let those little numbers and validation in your brain tell you what you need to be doing next based on what you're seeing, because it is a little bit of a give and take as you're going until you start seeing what you want.
Absolutely. Yep, we do not have all of our framework and to get where we want to be. And yes, it becomes painfully obvious when you know your data and your system. All right, so let's go ahead and under data, I'm going to click show value labels. Great. So now I can see these coming in at the top. And I think because of spacing and how we're looking at this, if this was in the report viewer, I'm expecting to see on the top of each one of these columns the value, the counts that we have. And that can be an easier way to, again, quickly just take a look and be like, yep, those are the counts. So I'm going to keep that in, and our goal is just to keep refining this. But as Sam said, we don't have our foundation fully in place. So over here, I'm going to add a separator later. For now, I'm not going to add that. I'm going to go get in our data coming in to the right place. So we're going to go work on our filter. I'm going to bring created date in as a filter. I'm also going to bring in ADU or accessory, but as you see, I didn't type in the first part. This could have been in the middle. It would still search and find that. So that is helpful. I'm going to switch this to be the first one since this is something that we're going to always have placed. This is a filter if I put into my description the assumption that these are ADUs, which I've put that into my title. I've also, well, I don't think I've put it into my description, but I could hide this filter if I wanted to and make it so that it's not visible, so no one really is wondering what is that there. So I will show that example as well. Since I'm going to be hiding this, I'm not going to change the labeling on this, but let's go ahead, click in here. I'm going to open up options on this filter. We're going to do the same thing we did with it last time. We're going to grab a string operator and we're going to say it's like. We're going to put in Y. We're not required. We could require this if we're adding in our own values here and making it not visible. No one can change this, but I could also say make sure that this is run with this and say it's required. So we have a value, we have a comparison that we're doing, and this will get us down to the ADU jobs. Then created date. We can take a look at what options do we want to use here, and we could add a date range. Again, we've just been pretty consistent with date ranges. I want to modify the name of this, and maybe I'd like ADU created date or building permit or none of it. But let's say we also require that as well. So this will be visible and it will be required that we insert some data before entering it. So you can leave the date range open. You don't have to pre-select that unless it's part of your design that you want this automatically to run with the last fiscal year or the last year or the last month or the last week, whatever the case may be. If it's a part of your design, you can go ahead and pre-select this and keep it visible, or you can make it not visible and include that assumption into your title, into your description. Here, I can leave this open. It's not going to run until we have a value. So this is one way to leave the data open, but let your viewer be the one to put in the criteria. Click OK. I'm going to apply the filters. All right. What else do I want to add to this? I want to separate this out. So one thing we were doing with the ADU summary is we were looking at different status descriptions. Here, I can go ahead and do that for each year. I'm going to add in a separator. And let me take out ADU from my search over here. and type in status, and we get a status description. So I'll grab that and bring it down as a separator. And now we'll get to see how that's going to interact with our chart. So for each year, we're going to see the different status descriptions. And let me add in a date, let's say 2015, at the beginning of the year there, and then we'll leave it open for the rest. We'll save this and switch over to the report viewer to get a better look and feel for how this report's going to be. At this point, I haven't added a header, I haven't added a footer, so there's more work we can be doing here to this report. But I'm going to save this. I'm going to save this in training. And then I'm going to go to the report viewer.
So now what you're seeing here is the fact that it's not going to run the report because Chris had created the mandatory date range. Anytime someone takes a look at this report as a viewer, it's not going to show any sort of data until they enter that date range and hit apply, because it's required. It doesn't want them to just do an empty open date range. It wants them to think about it first and then enter something and then go ahead and apply the filter. So
we're also going to open up our preview records to all records and apply filter. Please select value. So in this case, because it is a range, it is requiring both. So we went from being open where we can add in neither end of this. Now we're in a place where we have to add in both. So I'm going to add in the end of the year to fulfill that requirement. I'm looking at this, the first thing I notice is, I'd like that to be bigger. So again, we know how we can go back to the configuration or back to the design view and stretch this out so it ends up taking more space on your screen right off the bat. I can hover over each one of these and see, okay, this is permit revoked for the year 2017. Here's plan review in progress. So I can quickly get a view of each one of these. Now, one thing I haven't added is a legend. It would be nice to see what colors are lining up with what statuses. So again, it's even quicker for you to process this data.
And I'll jump in here also just a little bit, and I'd also point out that the way this is where you start to get some interesting questions as to the way you want to present what you're looking at and what data you want to show. Because to some people, this might look a little strange. Like, okay, well, obviously, it's interesting. Why was there so many of this particular status type here or this status type here? But it might not be very obvious to show that this is talking about all of the data set as of now, as of the way they're looking at it. So that's why the older stuff, there's a lot more of that blue line, the completed line, because those are all older permits from a long time ago. Those are closed ones. So obviously there's going to be way more closed ones now and way less open ones from that long ago. But but obviously ones from more recently are going to have way more inspections in progress and plans review in progress, because those are ones that haven't had as much time to be completed yet. So someone looking at this might be thinking that those statuses might have been from that year, but it's actually from this year as of the current status of those permits. So that's kind of also a way to, you want to be thinking about how people are reading your data and where that's coming from in this particular instance.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam. All right. Who would like to go through this with me? and let's go ahead and build this report out together. I think it will give us a good repetition of, again, creating a report, choosing the report type, adding data source, and then having a plan of what's going to be displayed and how it's going to be displayed. We don't have to go quite as far as I did, but would somebody like to go through and let's just get the data set up in this case? Dawn, would you like to join this one?
Okay.
All right. I'll stop sharing my screen. I'll be there to talk to you about what fields we're going to add where.
Okay.
And if you
Hold
want,
on. It didn't upload. Close share tray. Oh. Share. Cancel. Hold on.
You hit share, and then it should give you some options of your different monitors or applications to share, and then you should hit the share button after you've selected one.
Share. I'm not sure what's going on. What do you see?
we don't see anything yet. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. It's not coming on.
What options is it giving you when you click on the share screen button?
It says close share tray.
Okay, let me just take a look at where you might be.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Is this the one? Share. Okay. Did you get it?
Give it a second. It's probably going to load here in a moment. Oh, now we're getting something. There we go. Now we can see the screen.
Okay. So.
All right. So you're building right along. That's fantastic. Do you want to go? Is there anybody wondering what data source we used on this? If you are, raise your hand and we'll make sure you know that it's the building permits data source. So Dawn, you've already added that. Go ahead.
I'm not sure what you're seeing, but I see mine's kind of blanked out.
Oh, we're seeing what you're doing on your screen. So if you want to go, I see that you have filters. I see you have the building permits data source. Do you want to go down to the report body and click on charts at this point? And that'll be the type of report part we're adding in. And then we're going to, for the x-axis, or yeah, you can go ahead and fill out the title if you'd like to in the description.
I said I did this already.
You did fill out the report name, the ADU summary, or in this case, it appears that you know Sam very well, and it's a summary. But so let's go ahead and just add in your x-axis if you're ready to do that, and you'll grab the created date, and you can search for it using that field on top if it helps you get there quicker. There you go, and just pull that over. And then let's go to the right-hand side, and let's change the field name alias to created date. You could simply just add a space in between, yep. And take a look at we're currently grouping. The function is to group this together by year, and that's just fine. That is what we want in this case. So just showing you that it already is doing some logic as you're bringing it in. So that, and you don't really need, if you want to change the color, you certainly can do that. but let's add into the values. We're going to go up to the search again, since you have CR into the search. Go ahead and delete that out, and let's search job ID. And we'll add that into the Y axis. And then for the job ID, we want to go over to the right-hand side, and you could change the field name alias or leave it the same. But then we'll want to change the data format. Nope, you're good there. You can go ahead and come down, and then let's change the function from sum to count distinct. So we want to count each one of these jobs, and a count will be just fine here as well. Yep, that's great. While we're here on the right-hand side, you see field properties, and below field properties, you see report part properties. Go ahead and click on that. Let's change this from a line to a column. Great. And I don't think there's really anything else you need to change. Actually, let's do the show value labels under data so that we add those value labels on the top of each column. So down a little bit further, you'll see the section data. And then you'll see the first item there is show value labels, and check that. There you go. I think that works well. Let's come back over and let's add in our separators. So we're going to, again, separate this by status description. You can scroll down until you find status description. Okay. At this point, I think we're out in the same ballpark. Let's go look at your filters. So you have two filters currently. You have the accessory dwelling ADU filter. And let's just take a quick look at that. If you click on it, you'll bring that down. Great. We're taking a look at the string and making sure that is like or equal to Y. Perfect. Let's slide over to ADU created date. And currently you have date time in there. I'd go ahead and just change that to between date, so that your users, your viewer, does not have to enter in a time there. And yep, you switched over to between time. Let's go back to that and let's change it to between
date.
Yep,
Yes.
it's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's lots of different options there, and not all of them are as commonly useful as others, but it does give you the opportunity if that was something else.
At this point, you could change preview records from 10 to all, but it looks like you have everything in place. And from here, you would just be doing tweaks and modifications to make this look a little better, to have this be more presentable. But that looks like your report is being done correctly and your data is coming through to share its story.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Don, you seem to be getting pretty comfortable. How are you feeling about all this?
Pretty good. It's not too bad.
Good. I'm glad to hear this. I think this is a really great tool. That's not an actually statement. I enjoy working with it. There are some pieces of it that can be frustrating from time to time, but for the most part, it helps you get quite a bit done in a short period of time. And you'll spend a lot of time at that last stage of just getting it to look just right, and asking your other report creators, hey, should I change this around a touch or do this? But yeah, it looks good. Well done, Don.
Okay, I think, what would be helpful if you could give us like a list of, like for the added calculated fees, like a commonly used application. So we don't have to figure it out and get all these error messages. That would help a lot.
Okay, calculated fields. We will think of what are the common uses we add these in for. And I kind of showing this example also shows there's many ways you can avoid using a calculated field, but sometimes it is just the right solution. So we will try to come up with some good business cases for that. And I don't mean come up with, but more think back to a number of reports that we've created and when they have been most useful.
Okay,
So
great.
I
Yeah,
appreciate
and
that
Thank you.
suggestion, and let me add that.
And I think the calculated fields is certainly something that, I mean, we can make those into even global fields that everybody could use if there's really common things. Our problem is we don't really know what would be helpful for all of you guys, or necessarily even, time to go out there and do something that would be worthwhile. So if you're thinking about those things and you're saying, hey, this is a calculation we do regularly, you can feel free to add that into a GIS work request as well that's talking about what kind of data you would want. We can certainly add that. Additionally, I think I might talk with Ken as well about getting a few hours of our support time into a mentoring bucket. I think that was discussed at some point. That basically would mean that we would have a few hours of time that we can use to help you guys with just one-off questions, or put together an expression or something like that if you're interested in doing that, but need a little bit of help. We wouldn't be able to do that right away until I get that approved by Ken, though. So I'm not going to promise anything at the moment, but that's something we certainly can do to help you guys out as you guys are working with it.
Thank you, Sam. All right, we have 9 minutes before we're going to take another break. Let's go in and take a look at our first dashboard. In this case, we're just going to very crudely and basically throw together 4 report parts and call it a dashboard. But the main concept for a dashboard, so here on my screen, I'm just going to go to the dashboard tab. And the main concept, back to that idea of a dashboard, is bringing together different report parts that help tell a bigger picture. So maybe you could have a count on one and then be diving a little deeper into that same topic and show a list of whatever you're counting in one, be showing a list of that in the next one. So I'm going to create a dashboard in the same way that I create a report. It just bypassed a menu for me. So I'm just going to click that button again and see if they'll come back. So dashboard, present layout, present layout. Okay. Preset layout. There is the word. So I'm going to select these 4, so 2 by 2. So we're going to bring in 4 report parts. And now all I'm doing is these reports already need to be created in our reports section. So maybe when you originally made your design for the report, you knew it would be going into a dashboard. So you don't have any header or footer on your report itself. You do have a title and a description so that you can see exactly what this is if it's coming into a dashboard. But I'm just going to click report part here. And then I can search for, so I'm just going to do an open search, or let's say I want to do a search for, I believe we had building permit. Oh, no, actually, I'd like to start with my LUPD. So I'm going to search for this by report name. I put in LUPD. Great. I get all these LUPD jobs. I'm going to, or reports, excuse me. I'm going to go select the one that I created. And then it gives you the option. The next thing you need to select is a report can have multiple report parts. So if we had created a couple report parts in that report, I'm going to select the one I want out of that list. But in this case, it's just one. So easy to pick that and bring that in. So that's going to be loading that report. It brings in the filters that I used for that report. So as you bring a dashboard together, you've thought about this, you've designed this, they probably have quite a bit of commonality between them. So most of them may have the same filters. And that way, when you put in a report filter, when you put in a filter as you're viewing it, this is going to filter across all these different types. Let me just go ahead and take a look at text. So I'm going to click the button text here, and I can just add in whatever I would like here. So LUPD jobs, and maybe I would have put this text in the first one, overview, and then some of that. Okay, great. I don't need to add a dashboard tile. I am looking to go back and add my next report part.
Do you just hit save? I think it takes you back.
I think you just hit save. Yeah. So dashboard name, I'm just going to call this dashboard 1. And we have a training category here in the dashboards as well. I'll add it to OK. So this will save. Give it a moment. I believe I clicked on save. Yep. All right. So now I have text here. I could have added a title and then text in the description as well. So I'm giving you plenty of options to tell your viewer what is going on here. I'm going to grab another report part, and I'm going to go find our gauge, which that would be report 3. So I'm going to just type in notice and search for our report 3. And I'm going to add in a last one here. And let's grab our second report we built together, building permits with plan reviews. So then type in plan review.
And I'll just add in as well, this is pretty contrived. Obviously, you probably wouldn't want to have a dashboard that includes information on notices of violation and on building permits and on land use permits and the same dashboard. That doesn't make a ton of sense, but you're thinking about your audience, either the manager who will be looking at this, or someone within your branch or division that cares. What's the commonality between all these different pieces, all these different reports, and how would it be? Basically, what's the benefit of a dashboard is that you can compare then data back and forth between a few different values and keep an eye on a lot of things at the same time. So if all of those things are valuable in the same area, then it makes sense to put them all together in a single dashboard, and then you can easily compare to what's going on in different parts of the business at the same time.
So yes, very much back to design. Who's your audience? What are you wanting to show them? What story do you need to communicate? All right, here we are. So I have my different report parts in here. If I had common filters, I could apply these, cross them. Any questions here before we take our break?
How are you able to do the grid format, like the I guess the layout of the dashboard?
Absolutely. So right at the beginning of this, well, let me just say, if I already created it, then I could go to add dashboard tile. So trying to click on this, and I might actually already be adding, yep, it added 2 here at the bottom, but I'm going to go to create a new dashboard. So losing my changes, yes. And I don't know why that pop-up is being taken away, but here is the pop-up where you can choose your layout right from the beginning.
Yeah, it seems like occasionally it doesn't pop up with this menu. You have to click it the second time, and then it kind of seems to come up. Is what I'm noticing.
So I have a question. If you've already saved that preset layout, can you change that layout to a different one?
I'm not quite sure if you can use that same preset selection. I don't think you can. I think you need to manually go in and modify the layout. As you were seeing, I could add more dashboard pieces on.
Right.
But I don't know.
If you click on edit, I think you can go and you might be able to change the layout from the edit button on the dashboard on the left side.
I believe we should have the same functionality of moving and scaling as well. So dashboard description, background, color, image, copy, move, show filters, description, title.
Yeah, so maybe not.
Not there.
So you would actually have to create a new.
No, I don't think we're there yet. Hold on. So there we go. So I can adjust the size. I can pick this up and move it. So say I want to bring in a new one. I'm just going to drop this down here slowly and surely. So, all right. Yep. You can just modify the size. You can drag it around, a little painful on the dragging. And then I can add in a new dashboard tile if I want here and bring it up. I also can delete these as we have before on a normal report. So you have all that same functionality.
Okay, Chris, on the one that you just moved, do you have the ability to say, okay, that one's a really important one out of all of them? Can I take that and spread that across both, like the two open bottoms, or is it only going to be in one part of that cube?
No, you can stretch this. It's going on the back. You see the tiles behind it, so that's where it's snapping to on the grid. But yeah, you can make this as big or as small as you want for each one of them.
Yeah,
great question.
Yeah, Charlie, it's got a grid that's like roughly 8 tiles across, I want to say, or maybe 10, and so of smaller grid pieces, so it can fit into any sizing within that kind of smaller grid. It doesn't show the grid until you start pulling things out and snapping to it, but any sizing that you want to do, you could make the entire screen one report if that's what you feel like you need to do. So.
All right. Any other questions? Any thoughts? Okay, let's take a 10-minute break or just a little bit more than that, and we'll see you 5 minutes after the hour. Thank you, everyone.